Hi, ladies, and welcome back to the Rooted Mama podcast. Now, I'm super excited for today's episode because something that keeps coming up in my conversations with mothers is that they wanted to breastfeed, but it was not as easy as they thought it would be. They all wished that they had prepared more for breastfeeding. So, if you're a mama who is about to have a baby and thinking about breastfeeding, this is the episode for you. We're joined by Avery, who as a first-time mom, had some challenges both in her pregnancy and in her breastfeeding journey, which really led to her wanting to become a certified breastfeeding specialist. What I loved about this episode was that Avery gave us kind of a beginner guide to breastfeeding, literally starting from the moment that the baby is born. And I know that it's going to be super helpful for any new mom out there trying to understand the different lingo and terminology that might be thrown at you when your baby is born. We also talk about variations of normal in breastfeeding, and we even talk about how breastfeeding moms can maximize their sleep. This was a great conversation, and I hope you all enjoy it. So let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Rooted Mama, the podcast where motherhood meets wisdom, support, and empowerment. I'm Destiny, a mother on a mission to help women embrace a healed and fulfilling version of motherhood. Whether you're planning for your first baby, navigating pregnancy, or already deep in the parenting journey, each episode features real conversations with women in every stage of motherhood, insights from experts, and practical tips to help you feel grounded and confident. Hi, Avery.
Hi, Destiny.
How you doing today?
Doing great. It's snowing here. I have a fire upstairs. Cozy. How are you?
It's actually snowing here too.
Is it really?
Yeah. I mean,
Wow. Okay.
it's not to the level, I think, but it's snowing here
I'm
too.
sure. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a big winter storm.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I feel like it's going across the whole, like I saw it's even as far as Texas. I'm in Tennessee.
Oh,
right? And then you're in Connecticut. So I feel like it's going kind of in a band up the coast.
Yeah,
So,
that's probably right. I know we're under like an advisory until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I was like, all right, it's a big storm.
How many inches are y'all supposed to get?
Between 4 and 7.
Okay, so that's a solid number.
Yeah, we'll get out and sled tomorrow.
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, so people are like really crazy about snow down here, and you're from Texas, right? So I'm sure you understand. So like Tennessee is kind of weird. So going from living in the deep south of Houston, then going to Connecticut, I felt like it was a huge shock because it was like so different. And when we thought about moving back south, I thought for sure that it was going to be like the South. But being in Tennessee feels like Diet Connecticut sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like it still has winter. But the thing is, although they get winter, they often don't get snow. So whenever snow comes, they make a huge deal about it. And we had some like a couple of weeks ago, and it was kind of like precious to see like the reaction to it. Like even adults were excited and like sliding down the hill and like doing all the things. So that was kind of special. I mean, I stayed in the house, but I think maybe because I'm spoiled.
Yeah, it's true. Because like as Texans, we're still like, oh my God, it's snowing. And like now that we have Vivian, it's like, let's go play in the snow. And there's something like so childlike about it. My husband is like 6'1", like 250 pounds, and he's like out there on the little sled, like going down the hill. So yeah, I think you're just used to it. But the Texans and the Tennesseans they still get excited.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and they are supposed to be easy.
Okay, I'm scared.
Okay, so the first one is, if you had to choose between giving up your favorite snack forever or singing every word that you had to say for the rest of the year, which one would you choose?
Between giving up my favorite snack or singing everything,
like every word that you had to say.
Okay, I
Like
would
life is
definitely
a
give up my
musical.
favorite snack. I would definitely give up my favorite snack. Like, yeah, no way.
No singing.
No, always in way too much of a rush.
Okay.
It's like, I just need to say it quickly and we need to move on.
Okay, here's the next one. What is the strangest thing that you've found yourself Googling in the middle of the night?
Oh, God. That's a tough one. Good Lord. I immediately go back to like newborn days.
Mm-hmm.
The strangest thing. I mean, I'm sure something related to like, is this normal? Something to do with probably breastfeeding or newborn behavior.
Yes. Very common.
Yeah, like never ending anxiety about all of that kind of stuff.
You're not alone, I'll say that.
Yeah, thankfully not.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, especially mothers, are just kind of like, and especially because we're up in the middle of the night with the babies.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
will I ever get sleep again, Google?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on this, but yeah, before I was a co-sleeping bed sharing parent, and I would, it's like, this is how I have to stay awake in the middle of the night, is like browsing my phone,
Yes.
anxiously Googling things, Amazon shopping, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I find at this point now, like I have 2 kids now, and my youngest is 18 months and still like waking up in the night. So I feel like at this point, this is when I get my best thinking done at 3 a.m.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so those are the hard questions. The rest should be pretty easy.
All right.
So
fingers crossed.
This is the easiest one. Tell us about yourself. What would you like to share about yourself?
Let's see. I am a native Texan. Moved to New York City in 2019. We had one great year and then COVID hit, and now we live out in the woods of Connecticut.
What brought you to New York City?
My husband's job. So they were going to open an office in New York, and he texted me one day while I was at work, and he was like, what do you think about moving to New York City? And I was like, all right, let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And then y'all moved to Connecticut running from the city, I would assume.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. As so many people did. But yeah, we went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah. Did y'all have your daughter before you moved to Connecticut?
No. I could not imagine having a baby in New York City. Maybe if I was like a millionaire.
Yes.
Or a billionaire. But no, so we moved here in 2021, and then I got pregnant in 2022 and had her in 2023, which is crazy.
Okay, so would you mind telling us kind of about your pregnancy and what kind of where you were, what you were thinking in terms of like what you wanted for pregnancy and birth?
Yeah, so pregnancy was like my thoughts that I have today were not at all on my radar, like pre-pregnancy, And so it's like, you get pregnant and it's like, all right, I can't, have deli meat or eat sushi or drink or smoke or whatever.
Yeah.
And, then it was like, well, maybe I should like think about what I'm putting into my body. It's like you look at prenatal vitamins and all of that kind of stuff. And so I would say I'm like a scrunchy mom, but my husband always gives me a hard time because I'll be like, okay, well, we're not doing this anymore because I read XYZ. And, so I call it my non-toxic journey. So my non-toxic journey started, when I got pregnant, and you are thinking about what you're putting into your body. And then it certainly has escalated since my daughter has been born, and thinking about, everything that now she's putting into her body.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel the same. That's kind of how it started for me. I guess just like in general. So I had a miscarriage for my first baby. And while that was painful, it was also kind of helpful because we went to like a doctor right away as soon as I found out I was pregnant, and they started like giving us rules and all the things that happen in your first visit. And I immediately was like kind of deterred from it. I don't know why. I can't even say why, because I wasn't crunchy before or anything like that. I was like a healthy person, worked out my whole life, all that stuff, but like that was it, right? And so it kind of like deterred me. And then we lost the baby, so then we kind of had like time to think about everything. So by the time I go into my daughter's pregnancy, I was more like eyes open, but still didn't know very much. I was more willing to like have a midwife, but other than that, it was still a journey. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I know. So I was like in between like a hospital birth or a birthing center. And then at my 13-week ultrasound, we had, it's called a nuchal translucency measurement, which like I didn't even know this was a thing. You know, I was like, let's just go in for the ultrasound and like see if she's still breathing or it's still breathing, you know, at that point.
What is it? I've never heard of it.
So nuchal translucency is like the space behind the neck, like the fluid behind the neck.
Yes.
And if it's a certain measurement, it can be like a marker for, you know, certain like genetic disorders or I think even like heart abnormalities. So at 13 weeks, you know, we were like, oh my God, like there's still a heartbeat. And then we get that news, which was like, you know, absolutely like gut wrenching. So then we were with like maternal fetal medicine from week 13 until week 27 of my pregnancy. And so I had like an amnio, and we did like the NIPT genetic testing. We did like a echocardiogram, all kinds of stuff. But my point is like with all of that like uncertainty, I was just like, I opted for the hospital birth. And we did hire a doula. So I had her there, which, you know, I don't know like if and when I get pregnant again. I don't know what route I would take, but thankfully like I had a good experience with the hospital and doula.
Okay. And I'm curious to know like what made you look for a doula. I'm thinking about where we were right when we started. So I'm just curious, like what popped into your head, or like what did you see or read to let you know that you should get a doula?
Yeah. So I think like social media is such a double-edged sword, but it was like this specific Instagram page, and it really just like opened my eyes to so many things. And then I think from there, I decided like I wanted to try. I wasn't like totally married to the idea of an unmedicated delivery, but I wanted to try. And so, you know, then it's like you go down a rabbit hole, as we do. And then, you know, like because we were with the maternal fetal doctor for so long, I wasn't really, and we were new to Connecticut too. So it's not like I had a great established relationship with an OB. And so then by the time we were discharged and went back to the OB's office, I was like, I don't really like any of these doctors. You know, like you go in with your certain questions and I'm like, but you didn't answer my question. You know, like you're talking around my question.
I'm wondering, why were you discharged? So what, did it come that your daughter was fine, or like?
Yeah. So it was basically like I had an amnio, we had a growth scan, we had an echo, and they were like, we don't see anything here. So, you know,
you can go back to the.
Proceed as usual and see what happens kind of thing. And honestly, like I switched OBs at 36 weeks because I was like, I don't like any of these doctors.
Yeah. Good
And
on
yeah, I like, posted in a local group, and I was like, I know we're talking about like OBs here, but I want like somebody more aligned with basically just like not pushing interventions on me.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like if I wanted to try for an unmedicated delivery, like I don't want anybody working against me. And so I found like a doctor that I did like. She wasn't on call when I went into labor, of course, but everything I had a good experience.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm wondering, because you are going to school to become a CBS, which is a Certified Breastfeeding Specialist.
Yes.
Did anything in your newborn like breastfeeding journey spark this interest?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, like my daughter will be 2 at the end of February, and I'm like still breastfeeding her. Just started night weaning. Like we're not even a weekend yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not an easy journey at all. I don't know if anybody has an easy breastfeeding journey, truly.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like we had thrush, and I had like an overactive letdown, and she had reflux and tongue tie, and it's just like navigating so many different things. And a lot of times, like, you go to your pediatrician, and we like, me being the extra person that I am, like the pediatrician that we saw initially, I was like, okay, I don't like her. But you kind of get like shoved off by these people, and it's like, oh, well, she's gaining weight, fine. Oh, well, she can stick her tongue out so that she's fine. And it's like, okay, but we're having a miserable experience here. So no, I don't think it is fine. So yeah, and I'm a speech therapist. So those worlds are kind of tied together. Yeah. Speechies.
Yeah.
So yeah, and honestly, it's like, I don't even know if it was like breastfeeding specifically, but just like learning everything, just like how everything is so tied together biologically. And when women either don't know, or it's like scary to advocate for yourself. Like, I remember when I like declined a cervical check, and I was like, is that okay? Because it's scary to like talk back to these like medical professionals, but you got to do it sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about a lot of things, and
yes,
there were a couple of things where I'm like, oh, we should talk about this. We should talk about this. So I think the best place to start is kind of this going back to the CBS, right? I often hear the IBCLC, right? A lot of people hear like lactation consultant. They say that there's lactation consultants in the hospital. And so are they similar? Are they different? Could you just kind of talk about what one is versus the other?
Yes. So, like an IBCLC is going to be like the top of the line lactation support. So like definitely dealing with more complex cases. There's like a more rigorous certification exam, and so like I have my certificate as like a breastfeeding specialist, and that's kind of like a stepping stone to IBCLC. It doesn't necessarily I can use it as a credential because I'm also an SLP, so those worlds are related.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you would see anybody as like a certified breastfeeding specialist as a standalone credential, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I did like
What's
95 hours. Speech-Language Pathologist. Gosh. I know. It's like, well, I talk fine. It's like, buckle up, honey.
Yeah. So most people know what a speech therapist, a speech-language pathologist, right? But often people don't understand that SLPs work with swallowing and feeding. Yes. So Avery, if you want to talk about how that relates, that would be great.
Yes. So I actually, like, my first job out of college was working in a skilled nursing facility. And I mean, that's what's so great about our field is like you can work with the entire lifespan. So, yeah, it's not just like R's and S's and TH's.
Right. Which is what most people think. Or
yes.
stuttering.
So, right. Yes. So yeah, assessing, you know, swallowing, feeding assessments, tongue tie. I'm in the middle of taking a course, you know, because it's like you touch on that stuff in grad school, but I wouldn't feel confident being like, well, I'm an SLP. Like I took a class on that 10 years ago. But it is within our scope of practice. So, you know, certainly like with courses and continuing ed and stuff.
What's a tongue tie?
Oh God. That's a complicated question.
I know that it is because I've learned more and more and realized that it's way more complicated than we think. But
it is.
If you could just do the simple version, because some people literally don't know what a tongue tie is.
Yes. Yeah. So a tongue tie, you have different like classifications, but basically it's where the frenulum, well, let me not get too technical. Basically, it's where there's limited range of motion of the tongue, right? And so when, you know, I was breastfeeding my daughter and I was like, there are some signs here, red flags. And this was before, you know, I didn't really know anything about tongue ties, even being a speech therapist.
Yeah.
So it was like a new world for me too, to a degree. And I was like, okay, a lot of what I'm seeing could be aligned with a tongue tie. Well, then you go to her pediatrician. She's like, oh, well, she can stick her tongue out. But the tongue needs to do a lot of different types of movement, range of motion for successful breastfeeding, for eating, for speech, all of that stuff.
I feel like it's like, so my mom has a pretty severe tongue tie and my grandmother didn't try to breastfeed. It was like straight formula fed through a bottle. And I think if she did try, she would have had like terrible, like not good success because she has the butterfly effect. So like for anyone listening, if you were to stick your tongue out, your tongue should just kind of like come straight out, right? Like it should still keep the shape. But someone who has a pretty severe tongue tie would have this kind of flaps coming out on the side, so it looks like a butterfly, like the butterfly wings, right? So
or
they
like
wouldn't
a heart
like come
shape.
Yes, a heart shape. Perfect. Yes. So instead of like coming straight out, the tongue kind of like flares because there's such a restriction at the base of the tongue that it just can't come out. So it just kind of like does that shape. My mom's is like the most extreme that I've ever, like she cannot get her tongue out of her mouth. And you would think, I know, and like you would think that she wouldn't even kind of like be able to speak clearly, but she speaks just fine. So that's kind of like the weird thing about, since we're speech therapists, like the weird thing is that you would assume one thing or another when it comes to tongue tie, and like some kids just are resilient and it's like no big deal. Others have like a lot of trouble, and then you know when it comes to feeding, especially breastfeeding, your tongue really does play a huge role. And for babies to really suck, especially because like I'm just thinking about how they suck on a breast versus the bottle, right? And you can talk more about it, but just like when you see the images of babies, like they're not sucking, they're like ripping, right? Like it's a different kind of like motion. And if the tongue is restricted, then there's going to be trouble. So that's tongue tie. But and then so you were saying that your daughter was kind of showing some signs. Were there other? So we kind of talked about what it might look like, but could you give some of those red flags that you saw?
Yes. So for her, it was like she was having reflux. So this was also, it's like if the latch is not optimal, then your baby is going to be taking in air, which is going to cause gas. And so
what's a latch, Avery? These are new moms.
Okay, so the latch is how your baby is like attaching to your breast to breastfeed. And so like the latch is so important because if you don't have a good latch, your nipples are going to be in severe pain. And yeah, which I'm sure we all have stories
yes.
about that.
Yes.
So definitely like latch assessment is so important. Even if you're like, oh, everything feels fine, like especially if you're in the hospital and they have lactation support on hand, get a latch assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what is a good way to go about this, because again, like these are like fresh ears, is maybe if you explain like you get a baby in your arms and like how maybe the session is supposed to go. And then we can talk about some of the things like, well, for the most part, right? So like you get that baby in your arms. Most of the time, the mom's just going to take a boob out and like have the baby holding like a football, you know, like that normal position, not a football, but like holding the baby, just like that typical position. And now they think that the baby's just supposed to like get on. So I'm thinking if we kind of like go through the steps of like what it might
sandwiching,
look like. Yeah, all of those different things. And then we could talk about what could, I don't want to say goes wrong, like the differences, right? That go on. And because I think that's probably better than talking about the issues. If they don't actually know what the natural kind of flow is, it will be difficult. So let's go through the natural flow. So the baby is born, you got him in your arms, and then what happens?
So I do want to talk about, it's called the breast crawl.
Yes.
Which is like a super primitive, beautiful sequence of events. Like newborns are hardwired for survival. And, you know, giving them the opportunity to, you know, they're not going to like full up crawl on their hands and knees, but a key after delivery is that skin to skin time. And then giving them the opportunity to make their way to the breast, and they will initiate breastfeeding, which is like truly mind-blowing. And just YouTube breast crawl and you will see kind of what this looks like. But then, so later on for like a more formal feeding,
so wait, you have your baby. The breast crawl is like immediately after they're born. In theory, they would kind of find their mother's breast and get on their own. Okay, just clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And then, so you know, they're like, I remember when I was in the hospital, and I was like, how do I like, you know, get comfortable? And there are so many different like positions. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, you have your baby, and I always, well, you can't see me, but, you know, it's like sandwiching your breast, and you want, like, the baby's not just attaching to the nipple. You want to get a lot of areola. Most of the areola should be in the mouth, so it's more of like a rounded. If your baby just attaches to the nipple, that's going to be painful. And like another thing, you know, there is a learning curve here. I'm not going to say like, oh, breastfeeding is like so comfortable, but if it's like really painful, that's a red flag. Yeah. That something's going on with the latch, right?
Right. It feels like kind of tight. Like they have a pretty tight suction, but it shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yes, it's like, you know, having the breast and then making sure they have what it's called like a deep latch.
So the baby's mouth would be like super open, ideally, right?
Before? Yes, like lips would be like flanged. Yeah, but you also want to make sure, you know, that they're attached, because if there's opening, like if there's, you know, if they can get in air.
I know.
That's also, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. Like,
like they're full. Yeah. There should be a full like suction
like
on the boob.
Like your full boob is like in the mouth. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. So the baby's on. Now I've heard things like you should hear them swallow every other, like, you know, you should listen to make sure that they're swallowing.
Swallow.
Yeah. So there's like a pattern. Is there some truth to that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, for sure. So it's like shallower sucks, and then it'll be kind of like a gulp, like a suck, swallow pattern. And I remember too, like my daughter would be like quivering, and I was like, well, what does that mean? And the lactation consultant was like, it's just like her resting, because it is like breastfeeding is work for them too. Certainly like as newborns, you know, having to like work up to more efficient breastfeeding. But yeah, so like you're looking for a suck, swallow pattern. And so it'll be like shallow, and then deeper. And you can tell when they're swallowing because there's like a certain sound. It's kind of like a kind of like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So that there is truth to that for sure.
Okay. So they have like a kind of a little bit of a pattern. That this is for just like a typical sort of session. That's what you're kind of looking for. Yeah. And then I know from personal experience that with both of my babies, they would often fall asleep like pretty quickly. Does sleep mean that they are full?
So that's a complicated question. Honestly, like a lot of it, I'm just thinking, you know, like if a mom has an epidural during delivery or, you know, is delivered via C-section, a lot of that can affect the alertness of a newborn.
Why?
Well, I mean, the drugs, you know, fentanyl.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that does, like, you know, people use epidurals every day. This isn't like a PSA to not use an epidural.
Yeah.
But it can affect, like, mom's alertness. And obviously, you know, like, that's going to transfer to baby. Or... Well,
I feel like a lot of women don't know that, though, right? So they'll just, like, assume...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was like, why? Because a lot of women don't... This is like my big thing. If there are like mothers listening and I'm so glad you're on, because where women kind of like internalize a lot of these things as like a problem that is just kind of like fell from the sky, you know, or like they don't actually know how things are connected. And like you said, it's not like you're trying to deter women from using an epidural, but at the same time, if you get one, this is something that might come up. So like, let's say that you have decided that you want one no matter what, and you also want to breastfeed, just be aware that your baby may have some effects that you kind of like just have to work around. Maybe they won't, but like at least knowing that these things can be related, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. And I mean,
that's know,
like we know in pregnancy and being moms, everything is a risk assessment. Nothing comes without a risk. And so it's just weighing risk versus benefit, you know, and so much of pregnancy and delivery is it is biologically normal. And then when we have these interventions like epidurals or inductions, you know, it can alter what is biologically normal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
My passion is for women to know, that way they can make informed decisions. That's it. Like, I'm not here to make the decision for you. I'm just here to like educate you so that you know.
I just feel like you just want to know what correlates to each other, right? So you don't go into it like, well, my baby was really tired, or there's something wrong with my baby, or whatever. And it's like, well, there's nothing wrong. There probably is nothing wrong with your baby. This is just a side effect. And like as far as breastfeeding goes, maybe it's a slower start to breastfeeding, but it doesn't have to be the end, because that kind of goes into when you're in the hospital and you're kind of like in the immediate postpartum, and they're wanting to make sure that your baby is feeding before you go home. And then maybe the baby isn't, right? Because of what's going on, and the baby's trying to recover, and they're trying to get a bottle to that mother already, right? So
Right.
it's just really important to understand kind of those nuances, because you kind of like are on the clock when you're about to leave for
Oh
in some
gosh.
places.
Yes.
They're
Yep.
like, the baby needs to feed this many times and whatever. And so then
Mhm.
the mother,
Mhm.
not knowing these things, may immediately just say, well, breastfeeding isn't going to work for us. So we're
Right.
just, you know, like
Or yeah, we do need
immediately.
to have formula. Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost like
And
immediate. Either if it doesn't work
yeah.
in 24 hours or if it doesn't work that day, then it's not going to
Mhm.
work, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. You know, things like an induction, and if you're induced, like there's a reason why we have like 40-week gestation period, you know, like if babies come early via induction, you know, it could be that they're not ready. Like
Mm-hmm.
they still want to be inside cooking, you know, so there are so many factors. And yeah, also, like I've heard a lot about if a mom has a C-section, there might be a delay in her milk coming in,
I was going to
but
ask
it's
about
like,
this.
yes, yeah. And so, you know, like in at first, when you first start breastfeeding, you have something called colostrum. It starts later in pregnancy that you're making colostrum, and colostrum is enough. A lot of times, like a newborn's stomach is so small, like colostrum is enough. And I mean, there are going to be times when it's like a baby is not gaining enough weight. You know, they do like weight checks. Of course, there are times that breastfeeding might not be successful, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But it's just kind of like, you know, a doctor will come in and be like, oh, well, your milk isn't in yet. You know, this baby's hungry and we need to get her fed. And it's just, it happens so quickly. And moms, you know, not only do you not know, but you're like overwhelmed and tired, and like your body is still physically recovering. Your brain is like,
Yes.
wherever your brain is, you know, just like running on adrenaline and happiness because you just had this baby. But,
Oh my gosh.
you know,
I'm just like on the edge of my seat because I want to talk so much about it, but I don't want to do it on this podcast.
okay, yeah.
Well, just because I know who the listeners are, but there's like so many
Mm-hmm.
questions that I have when it comes to the first like 24, 48 hours of the
Mm-hmm.
breastfeeding experience when you're in some of these spaces. Like, I'm not sure about midwives like in hospitals. I've only had experience with midwives separate from hospitals. So
Yeah.
maybe they do it, maybe they don't. I really don't know, but I know like the midwives that are outside of the hospitals don't have like these kind of unrealistic expectations about feeding. Maybe they do in the
Right.
hospital. So I don't want to like talk for them. But what I
Yeah.
find is that um when the mother is attempting to breastfeed, and there's like people in the spaces that just seem to think that colostrum isn't enough. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where that comes from. I don't know if it's because they're used to babies drinking the pre-made formula and they take more than what they believe is coming out of the breast. Like, where does this come from that we don't think colostrum is enough?
I honestly don't know. I would have to
Okay.
research that question.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
something because like it's so common. So I wanted to pause here because Avery and I are talking about something that is super important, and it is a little bit confusing, especially as a first-time mom, what you may come up against. There is this notion that colostrum, the first milk, is not enough, and from my research, what I found is that this really stems from the Fed is Best campaign. And if you haven't heard of that yet, basically it's kind of self explanatory. It's a movement of people who are saying that fed is best. It doesn't matter if it's breast milk or formula, as long as that baby is being fed, that's what's most important. Now, I think we all can agree that this is true, but on their website, they often talk about the dangers of breastfeeding exclusively in the first couple of days of life. And this kind of stems from the founder's personal experience. The founder is a physician. Her name is Dr. Christy del Castillo Heggie. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but she is a physician, and her firstborn son allegedly suffered complications from insufficient breastfeeding. And from there, she began to investigate like complications that have risen from the insufficiency in breastfeeding. So she talks about brain injuries from jaundice, dehydration, all these things that are apparently related to delayed breast milk production. And something that I noticed was that there are a lot of horror stories on there where babies experience all of these complications. Some babies die. And I personally feel like it's a lot of scare tactics to get mothers to immediately feed their babies formula. I mean, they even link to studies that, in my opinion, are not really sound studies that suggest that things like brain injuries are due to dehydration and breastfeeding. And they totally leave out something that I don't really want to get into on this podcast, but there are things that happen to babies in their first days of life that have similar side effects. You can take with it what you will, but there are similar side effects for these babies. And one other thing before we get back into the episode is that there is such a thing as delayed milk production, and that's often related to the interventions that you're getting in these medicalized births. And Avery and I talk about that. So just wanted to interject here because I think it's super important, and it's something that a lot of first-time moms really stress about and are stressed about in the very first weeks of their baby's life. And then my second question that maybe you also don't have the answer to is, do you feel like these weight checks are beneficial in these early days? When it comes to breastfeeding, does it help the mother to have these multiple weight checks in the hospital?
No. Short answer, no. I mean, again, there are so many factors. Like if a mom has IV fluids during labor and delivery, like the baby's weight is already going to be higher than what it would be normally, like without the fluids. And so then it's normal for a baby to drop weight, right? But then if a baby comes out measuring heavier because of fluids, and then they drop what would be normally considered like, okay, that's normal. Well, now it looks like, oh my God, they've dropped so much weight. And then, yeah, it's like you have a timer on, because they need to like be back to birth weight by 2 weeks.
You said something, IV fluids. And most women who go into labor are going to have that IV, right? Like, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So just for anyone listening, like when you go in, and I just want to clarify, like, we're definitely not trying to deter. I think it's so important to just know how things are related. So it's okay to have a hospital birth. It's okay to do all these things. But when you go, if you have those IV fluids placed in, and then, like you said, if you have an epidural, if you have Pitocin, like any of these keywords, like if you start to hear those words, they can influence kind of like how the rest of your postpartum, like in those first couple of days, and how your baby is going to do in those first couple of days, because you and your baby are having to adjust kind of like back to some level of normal after those interventions, right?
Right.
So like the IV fluids, like just think about that. Like when people say water weight, right? Your baby may take on some water weight while you're in that birth process, especially if you're in a long birth process. So like if you've been induced and it's been days of, IV fluids and all that stuff. So by the time your baby is born, maybe they have this extra weight and then they drop it. And now you're thinking, oh, well, surely my milk isn't enough, right?
Right.
Because my baby's losing too much weight. And somehow we think that they should know this stuff, like the professionals, but for some reason it's kind of like a disconnect. And so they don't. And so you might have that extra pressure, which is kind of like, I don't know the word I'm trying to say, like it's in good faith. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
They are operating in good faith, making sure that you and your baby are healthy, trying to check those weights, make sure that that baby is healthy enough to go home. So it's in good faith, but sometimes it is misdirected.
Yes. And so much of like the medical model is so outdated. It takes so long. I mean, thinking about like the glucose drink that you drink when you're pregnant, And it's like, we need to update this. Like, I remember
I was like, wait, what are you going to say, Avery?
Yeah, like, how do I put this in a nice way?
I'm pretty sure mine had red dye in it. The one that I had red dye in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I took like the fresh test to my OB, and she gave me such a hard time. You know, she's like, oh, you know, very condescending. And it's like, I'm not an idiot. You know, like, I've done my research. And then, she called me back and she's like, okay, yeah, that's fine to use. And it's like, well, why did it have to be such a battle? But anyways, so a lot of, you know, what is normal or protocol is so outdated. And, you know, so it's kind of like, it is in good faith. It's also like, this is the way things have been done forever and ever. And we're not going to, you know, update it.
Yeah.
But it is scary. Like, as a breastfeeding parent, you don't know how much milk your baby is taking in.
Yeah.
Right. So like, how do you know?
Let's say we've passed all the tests. We're home now. There's not anyone like right there watching us. And now we're just feeding our baby. How do you know that things are going as expected?
Yeah. So I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but there are beautiful visuals where it's like, this is what you need to expect for day one. Like, not only diaper output, but like, are you feeding 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour period? Like, day one, the poop is going to be like black, very dark brown, the meconium. You know, and then day by day, it's like your baby should be having X amount of wet diapers, X amount of dirty diapers. You should be, you know, breastfeeding 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour period. And your baby should be like generally content, like after breastfeeding, you know what I mean? And there is colicky stuff. So, you know, you can take that with a grain of salt, but, you know, just like overall growth and development.
I think what you're saying is actually leaning more on your intuition and like being able to learn your baby and read your baby and learn their cues when they're hungry, when they're content. And then as far as like their diapers, obviously things go in and they have to come out. So, you know, a baby that is dehydrated or like not getting enough milk is not going to be putting out, you know, a lot of diapers, right? Like a lot of wet diapers.
And there are other signs too.
Yeah. So I think that's a really helpful, like super like at least for me, super straightforward kind of way to be monitoring. And then I know it's so hard in the beginning because you are a new mom, but it does get easier to understand your baby, like as time goes on and just kind of like reading them. But I will say, even the second time around with my son, it was a little bit chaotic in the beginning. And I would say like, that's probably normal. Like, this is a whole new person. They don't know, they don't know who they are. They don't know what's going on.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, it's a whole new human to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said it so perfectly that newborns are built to survive. And so think about, they're just like trying to survive. They're like, I've never breathed before. Like I got lungs. I got to use, you know, like everything is happening for the first time. And so, yeah, they are kind of frantic. Like I would say that like they can be a little bit frantic. Because I'm thinking about my friend. She said that the baby was like, like trying to get on, you know, like trying to get on, and like that's so normal. They're like, "Where's the nipple?"
Right. I mean, think about like, you know, when babies are like, I mean, at least for my daughter, who like I only have one, but her temperament is. She's laid back in a lot of ways. She's not laid back in a lot of ways. And, you know, I just remember like, I couldn't set her down, you know, like they're hardwired to survive, and their survival is mom.
Yes.
You know, like they need our chest, they need our breast, you know, they need all of us, because as long as we're there, their chance of survival is greater. And that's how it works in their brain.
That's a really great point. And it kind of leads into something that you and I were talking about, which is sleep. So when it comes to sleep, we've got a newborn and we're breastfeeding. I think we should talk about how sleep may look and how to best, I guess, get sleep with your breastfeeding newborn. Anything around sleep would be great.
Yeah, so this was like a tough pill for me to swallow, another rabbit hole I had to go down, because like my husband and I had to take shifts. He would sleep and I would have her while I was awake. And then, you know, he would have her on his chest awake while I was sleeping. And this was before, like, I know here in the United States, you know, it's like, don't bed share. It's very dangerous. And so when I was pregnant and I knew everything, I was like, oh, I'll never bed share. Oh, I'll never co-sleep with my baby.
I think it's important. Why? Like, what are these recommendations? I think if a new mother is listening, she probably doesn't have a clue about what we're being recommended for newborn sleep. So what are the recommendations typically? In the US, so like you said, it's definitely the US that is like pushing this.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's called like the ABCs, alone, on their backs, in a crib, with nothing in the crib, no blankets, no stuffed animals, no pillows. They do recommend room sharing. So like, you know, if you have a bassinet, it would be in your room. I can't remember what the recommendation is specifically, like maybe for 6 months. I honestly don't remember, but definitely the recommendation is not to bed share.
Typically, they will recommend that your baby be swaddled, right? Because the baby still wants, this baby was in your belly, swaddled, right? So swaddle basically means like you wrap that baby up and you put them in, like in a little baby ball, the way that they like to be. And then you place this baby ball into a crib or bassinet and expect them to stay on their back and like be comfortable. So that's kind of like the accommodation that you give them to be comfortable with not being in their typical like comfortable position, right? So that's what they want us to do. Now, I know mothers out there. I do know them because they're my friends whose babies did just fine with this, but I did not have this experience with my children.
Same.
In fact, most women, so I know that there are mothers out there, but they're the outliers because most of the women that I know who are mothers had a horrible time trying to get their newborn to sleep in this manner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so you're talking about bed sharing, and I'm curious, how did you, because I know how I did it, but I'm wondering, how did y'all do it once you got past like sitting up awake with your baby? Like, how did you successfully do it?
So she got to where, I mean, we had to like put a heating pad in her bassinet and then take it out because, you know, they want to be warm and they want to feel that warmth.
Yes.
So we did get to a point to where she was sleeping like okay enough in the bassinet. And like my big PSA about bed sharing and co-sleeping, I feel like it, like the analogy that I like to use is like not teaching safe sex because people are going to have sex. So you need to know how to do it safely.
Yes.
Like moms are going to bed share out of desperation because the lack of sleep is so real. And so it's like, you have to know how to do it safely. And if you don't, like, that's when the accidents can happen, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's something called the Safe Sleep 7. And it's like 7 pieces of criteria that would, you know, lend themselves to safer bed sharing. And honestly, like, you know, it is like baby being full term, healthy, like a non-smoking home, a breastfeeding mother. The baby does still sleep on their back, not swaddled, right? You don't want any kind of restriction. You know, like obviously the mom needs to be unimpaired, like not drinking or, you know, taking any kind of like sleep aid or any other kind of drugs.
I think there's like no blankets.
Yeah,
Right.
no blankets. They honestly make like adult onesies, which I haven't done, but like having a firm mattress, making sure there's no, they call them like entrapment risk, right? So like a bed up against a wall,
Yeah.
that's an entrapment risk. And Google it. I don't know if that's all of them, but Safe Sleep 7. There's also an amazing Instagram page called Co-Sleepy. And they do a lot of education on safe bed sharing. Because like, I mean, I don't know what the statistic is, but definitely the majority of moms will bed share at least one time.
Yeah. Especially breastfeeding mothers, right?
Oh my God, yes.
So I guess like that could be our connection here. So when it comes to breastfeeding and co-sleeping, do you have any input about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The like research shows that breastfeeding moms get more sleep when they bed share, which honestly makes sense because you don't have to get out of bed and then you don't have to stay awake while you're nursing this baby and get her back down and all of that kind of stuff. But it's also interesting. So prolactin is the hormone that is responsible for milk production, and that level peaks at night. So I really feel like that's telling, at how intertwined breastfeeding and sleeping together really is. Like from a biological perspective.
So this is like a random, it just popped into my head. I was not going to ask about this, but it's so related. So I did not follow the Sleep 7, the Safe Sleep 7. But I mean, we did like, and I think I told you this. I was like, it's like mostly common sense. But one of the things that I did, so I had a cervical disc like rupture before I had him, not when I was pregnant, but before I had my son. And I cannot sleep on my sides. Like it's so difficult to sleep on either side. And so I know the thought would be to like sleep in a C shape or something like that. I remember seeing like that on Instagram. So like sleep in a C, like around your baby. And it actually worked out like when you're doing side feeding, right? Well, what happened was I would feed him like that, but then my neck would be in so much pain that I would just end up sleeping with him on my chest, and I would put like something so that he wouldn't fall off the bed pretty much. Because we weren't up against the wall, but he would be sleeping on my chest. And when I would wake up, whatever boob that he was on would be super engorged. Like it would be so big. It would be bigger than the other boob. And I felt like it definitely was hormonal. Like it had to be something like super primal, but he would always like fall asleep on a boob, and whatever one he was not sucking, just like laying on it, like, like just laying on it. And it would be huge. It would be like rock hard compared to the other. And now that
Isn't that crazy?
It's so crazy. Oh my goodness. And I felt like once we stopped that, he was sleeping in his bassinet, I did feel like I didn't often wake up as engorged as I did. So like everything that you said just now was like so eye-opening, and I experienced it without even knowing that that's what it was, right? So
it really is. I mean, but our bodies are just so incredible, and it really, like, when you take away all of the modern, like, there's a time and a place for modern medicine, but if you strip all of that away, it really is like so primal and so beautiful and just mind-blowing. It's crazy.
Yeah. I have one more question that I know is like something that comes up a lot, which is low milk supply. And you kind of talked about it a little bit when you said like after a C-section, but a lot of mothers say that the reason why they couldn't continue was low milk supply. So can you talk about that?
Yes. So like really true low milk supply does exist, but a lot of it is like more perceived. And it's basically, not the baby's fault, not the parent's fault, but like mismanagement in those early days, right? So breastfeeding works on a supply and demand. So, like, how do you make more milk? You got to feed your baby at the breast. Like if your baby cries, put it at the breast. So really like those first 2 weeks is like the critical period. So, like I have a friend who just had a C-section. She was induced and had a C-section. And, they were worried in the hospital that baby wasn't getting enough. So they introduced formula, and that right there is going to affect your supply. Even if you make up a missed feeding with pumping, like a pump just isn't going to be the same level of efficiency as baby nursing straight from the breast. So a lot of it, and then, from there, it can be a slippery slope. So I also think like, those times of cluster feeding, which like I have PTSD from that.
Okay, what's cluster feeding?
God, okay, so cluster feeding, those are like periods of rapid growth. And so usually I felt like for me, it was like over a period of 3 or 4 hours, like when your baby might normally, go an hour or two. That was my experience with my baby. Without nursing, it's like every 30 to 45 minutes, and then to a new mom, it's like, oh my God, like, why are you feeding again? I just fed you. Like, how are you hungry again? So like educating yourself on those growth spurts. And every time I would Google, like, however old she was, like 4-week growth spurt, it would be like, yep. Okay. And so cluster feeding is normal. It's not a sign of low milk supply. So
this reminds me that something else that is well-intentioned but problematic are these like feeding windows, so like the baby should feed every 3 to 4 hours. And as a first-time mom, this just stressed me out so much. My child, none of my children follow this. Even still now, like they're, 18 months and 5. And like, that's a long time for a growing child to go without feeding, especially 4 hours. And I think that has to do with kind of like maybe formula fed babies. But even then, like when my daughter was formula fed, she still was a 3-hour girl. She wasn't a 4-hour girl. So that recommendation for anyone listening, like it is, I don't know a baby that follows that. It is the outlier, not the rule.
Yes.
And so when it comes to breastfeeding, like you had mentioned that cluster feeding, but just in general, breastfed babies are going to eat when they're hungry, and their mother, I would recommend just be attentive to that. And it definitely is a commitment, right? But it's just kind of like when you want a snack, you have a little snack. When you want a meal, you have a meal. Like it's just, you just have to kind of get in that mindset and not put your baby, have them have this standard of every it's just unrealistic. I don't know what human being lives off of this strict schedule, and I don't know who created it. Like, was it a man who created this?
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
I just had to, because this was something that I'm telling you, like as a first time mom, that was one of the things that really got me. And it wasn't that I thought my baby was starving or anything, but it was just like, what am I not doing right? Maybe I need to keep her awake. Maybe I need to, like it was something that I wasn't doing right, where she just couldn't last 3 to 4 hours. And then with my son, I was just like, this kid's going to eat whenever he's going to eat. And I'm just not going to have a lot of free time for a while.
Right. It is a commitment. Yeah. I remember our first pediatrician was like, okay, a baby should be going, 3 hours. And she even said, like, if she wants to nurse before then, try to hold her off. And it's just like,
for what?
What?
For what?
So yeah, breastfeed on demand. I mean, oh God. Yeah. And like another thing, and I had to learn this with sleep and sleep schedules and what's normal or not normal. babies are not robots. They are humans, right? And so it's just like so many, like social media being a double-edged sword, so many voices. And it's like, as mothers, like we have instincts for a reason. And it's like, sometimes you just have to shut out all of the other noise and don't worry about creating bad habits or, you know, your baby should be doing X, Y, and Z. And that's hard to do in our society. It's hard to shut out the noise.
Yeah. And it's all, again, like, I think that's the title of this episode is like well-meaning, well-intentioned, because it's like, I get it. There's someone out there this worked for their kid, or maybe this worked,
right?
Whatever. And so now they want to get out and say, I got my baby to sleep through the night in 8 weeks or whatever. And it's just
That's
unrealistic.
The gold standard.
Yeah. It's just not realistic. And I personally wouldn't want to like live like that as a human, right? Like I don't want to live on such strict expectations. And so I just don't think that it's fair to our babies to do that either.
Right.
There are a lot of words being said on the internet, and family members, mothers, mother-in-laws, a lot of people have advice or have their own experiences. And we know that breastfeeding can be hard, and a lot of people kind of give up. And so there may be a woman out there who maybe she's thinking about becoming a mother, maybe she's pregnant now, and she is not really sold on breastfeeding. Maybe she's worried because she saw failures. What would you say to that woman?
I mean, like, you know, first and foremost, like, I think it is important to acknowledge, like, sometimes, like, breastfeeding is not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. You know, like, that's why formula was invented. You know, for a mom who would be hesitant, like, one thing, like, that really struck me when I was taking my course for my certification was, like, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Like, you don't have to have a 100% exclusively breastfed baby. You know, like, any breastfeeding is better than none, you know? And, you know, certainly, like, expectation management is a big piece. So it's like, yeah, this isn't going to be easy. But, like, with proper support at home and, you know, like, in the community with other moms, or obviously, like, you know, lactation support, you know, just try it. And if it doesn't work, it's not a failure. It's not a reflection of you as a parent, you know, because it is hard, and our society does not lend itself to supporting moms in this way. And so, you know, I just think, like, having support at home and having realistic expectations and knowing if it's not successful, it's fine. You know, it's not the end of the world, but
it's not a failure. Right. That's why I went like failure, because it's not really a failure. Like, it's still better to try, but like to really try, right? Not like 2 days in the hospital, give up, but like really try, set yourself up for success by getting some prenatal education about it. Avery does that, right? So like getting yourself some support and knowing what to expect, listening to podcasts like this, right? Being able to know kind of like what's normal, what's not, or like not even normal, but what is to be expected and what is something that you need some extra help around, right? And then from there, if it's your baby just is not taking to it, or maybe whatever, like there could be many things. Maybe you truly are someone who has like true low milk supply, right? Then you just say it didn't work out, and you move on from there, knowing that at least you tried, but it wasn't like a halfy try, but like a real college try. You know?
Yeah. I mean, you never want to look back and be like, but what if I would have done, you know, like that. Yeah.
Right. You want to feel like you did everything possible, and now you're feeding your baby a different way, and that baby's still being fed, and that's what's most important.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Well, thank you.
I loved this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning into The Rooted Mama. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired, supported, and a little more rooted in your own motherhood journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mama or mama-to-be. Remember, motherhood is a journey best shared, so let's keep growing together. Until next time, stay strong, stay supported, and stay deeply rooted.